You'll manage, won't you? 15's old enough to survive an airport, my dad said, his voice laced with a mocking chuckle as if leaving me stranded was some twisted joke. His arm was draped around his new wife, her manicured nails clutching the boarding passes like victory flags, while her 2 kids giggled and tugged at his sleeve. I stared at him, my chest tightening, the terminal lights buzzing above me like they too wanted to expose the truth. People streamed past, dragging suitcases, hugging loved ones, but I was frozen, clutching a backpack that suddenly felt too small to carry the weight of this moment. Hi everyone, my name is Clara and I was 15 when my life split into 2 timelines. One where I was just the forgotten daughter in an airport, and another where I became someone no one could abandon again. The betrayal didn't come all at once. It seeped in with every shrug, every glance he didn't give me, every step he took toward that departure gate while my shoes were nailed to the cold, gray floor. I waited for him to look back. Just once. He didn't. The announcement echoed, final call for Flight 217 to Paris. My father's laughter blended with the sound, careless, free, belonging to a man who believed I was disposable. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't leaving for a vacation. He was leaving me behind on purpose. My throat burned. The airport air smelled of cinnamon pretzels and jet fuel, but all I could taste was rejection. The kind that scars. The kind that whispers you're not enough. I wanted to scream, but silence pressed harder than sound ever could. And then, almost by instinct, I pulled out my phone. A number I hadn't dialed in years. My estranged mother. The woman he warned me never to trust. My finger hovered, trembling. The line rang once, twice. She answered. Clara. Her voice cracked, raw, as if she'd been waiting for this call all along. I froze, the entire terminal fading around me. Would she save me, or had I just jumped from one betrayal into another? Her voice was soft but charged, like static before a storm. Clara, where are you? I swallowed, my throat dry. Dad left me at the airport. He's going to Paris with them. A silence stretched. Not the kind that forgets, but the kind that gathers weight. Then she exhaled, sharp and certain. Stay where you are. I'm coming. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Coming? From where? We hadn't spoken in years. Last I knew, she lived in another world. Expensive dinners, glossy magazines, whispered scandals that Dad used as ammunition. Yet before I could even question, she added, I'll be there in 3 hours. Don't move. The line went dead. 3 hours. I sat down on a hard plastic chair, my backpack between my knees. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting everything in an unforgiving glow. Families passed me, reunited with joy, while I was the lone figure nobody claimed. My chest hurt every time I replayed Dad's words. You can figure it out. As if I were luggage he could check and forget. Announcements kept rolling, flights vanishing into clouds I couldn't touch. I counted minutes. I traced cracks in the tiles. At some point, exhaustion hit and I must have closed my eyes because the next sound wasn't an intercom. It was the unmistakable hum of jet engines, but closer, sharper, private. Through the glass wall of the terminal, a sleek silver jet cut across the runway. People stopped, staring. It didn't taxi to the main gates. It pulled up near a restricted hangar, guarded. And then, like something out of a dream I didn't dare have, she appeared. My mother, stepping down the stairs of that plane in a tailored coat, heels clicking against metal. Her hair caught the light, her presence commanding the attention of everyone who dared to look. I stood, knees shaking. She spotted me instantly. No hesitation, no pause. She walked straight toward me as though I had never been lost to her. When she wrapped her arms around me, it wasn't gentle. It was fierce. Like she was reclaiming something stolen. She whispered in my ear, You're never waiting alone again. But behind her words I caught something else. An edge, a plan forming in the silence of her breath. Because this wasn't just a reunion. This was the beginning of a reckoning. She didn't let go of me right away. Her arms were strong, protective, and I could feel her heartbeat. Fast, determined, as though she was running on more than adrenaline. When she finally stepped back, her eyes scanned me head to toe. He left you like this. Alone. At 15. Her voice cracked, but not from weakness. From fury she was barely containing. All I could do was nod. My throat was tight, words locked behind a dam of shame and disbelief. Her driver appeared behind her, crisp black suit, phone in hand. He reached for my backpack but she stopped him. No. He carries it. It's hers. Not one thing about her will ever be taken again. Her words cut through the air like glass, sharp and final. We moved through the airport in silence. People stared, not at me but at her. She walked like she owned the floor beneath us, like even the fluorescent lights adjusted for her presence. I followed, my sneakers squeaking, my heartbeat loud, wondering if I had just stepped out of abandonment into another kind of storm. The jet's interior swallowed me whole. Plush leather seats, soft lighting, the faint scent of expensive perfume mixed with polished wood. I sank into a chair feeling too small, too rough for this world. My mother sat across from me, crossing her legs, her gaze fixed and unyielding. "Clara," she said, voice measured, "your father thinks he can erase me. He thinks he can erase you. But he's forgotten something." She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing like she was staring at a chessboard only she could see. "Everything he has, his house, his reputation, even that smug vacation, is built on foundations I helped lay. He's living in a glass castle and he just threw the first stone." I blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" She smiled, but it wasn't soft. It was the kind of smile that promised storms. "You'll see." The jet lifted, engines roaring, carrying me away from the airport where I had been abandoned and into something else entirely, a sky of secrets. As the seatbelt light flickered, I stared out the window, the runway shrinking below. My chest was still bruised by Dad's betrayal, but for the first time that day I felt a shift. Not safety, something different. Power. And it terrified me. When the jet touched down hours later, it wasn't at a crowded terminal but a private hangar lined with black cars. My mother's world was silent, shielded, calculated. She walked ahead of me, her heels echoing like punctuation marks in a story I hadn't read yet. The car ride to her estate felt like entering another universe. Iron gates opened without question, gardens stretched endlessly, and a mansion rose out of the night like something carved from marble and defiance. My sneakers sank into the gravel driveway as I stepped out, backpack still clutched tight, as if it was the only piece of myself I could trust. Inside I was surrounded by chandeliers and portraits, rooms that looked like they belonged in magazines. But none of it dazzled me. Not after what I'd just lost. My room back at Dad's house wasn't much. 4 walls, a desk, posters taped unevenly, but it was mine. And the echo of its emptiness gnawed at me. "Clara," Mom's voice softened now, almost human, as she led me to a guest room bigger than our entire old living room. "You're safe here. He won't touch you again." I wanted to believe her. But part of me wondered, was this safety or just another kind of cage? The days blurred. Her staff treated me with deference I didn't recognize. Breakfasts arrived on silver trays. Tutors were mentioned. Wardrobes discussed. But at night, when the house grew still, I heard her in her study on the phone, her voice sharp as knives. My name, my father's name, legal words I didn't fully understand. Custody, assets, breach. And then one evening she invited me in. The desk lamp carved shadows across her face, but her eyes were lit with something dangerous. She slid a folder toward me. Inside were papers. Legal documents, photographs, accounts I hadn't known existed. "This isn't just about him abandoning you," she said. "It's about the empire he's built while pretending you don't exist. He left you at an airport like baggage. Now he'll pay for it. In court. In reputation. In silence." My stomach twisted. I should have felt vindicated, but instead I felt cold. Like I was being drafted into a war I hadn't chosen. And yet when she asked quietly, "Are you with me?" I found myself nodding. Because revenge wasn't just hers anymore. It was mine too. But what I didn't know then was that revenge has layers. Some that burn your enemies and some that scorch you from within. The first blow landed the day my dad returned from Paris. He expected to find me sulking in my room, maybe waiting for an apology he'd never give. Instead he found it stripped bare, posters torn down, clothes gone, desk drawers empty. And waiting on his pillow, a thick envelope sealed with my mother's attorney's crest. He called me 30 times that night. I didn't answer once. The silence was my reply. At my mother's estate, I sat across from a polished conference table, legal minds flipping through documents like surgeons preparing for an operation. My name was on every page. Statements, evidence, photos of me at 15 abandoned at an airport. Proof of neglect. Proof of his choice. My mother's lawyer, a man with eyes like polished stone, tapped the folder. This case isn't just winnable, it's devastating. Public abandonment of a minor, financial misconduct, emotional neglect. He won't just lose custody. He'll lose credibility. And once that crumbles, everything else follows. I felt my stomach churn. Part of me still pictured Dad laughing at the departure gate, arm around his new wife, like I had been an afterthought. But another part of me remembered the dad who used to lift me onto his shoulders to watch fireworks, who taught me how to ride a bike on cracked suburban pavement. That dad felt like a ghost now. The court date came quicker than I imagined. I walked in beside my mother, the click of cameras outside flooding through the courthouse doors. Reporters shouted his name, her name, my name. I tugged at my sleeves, wishing I could disappear, but Mom placed a firm hand on my shoulder, steadying me like a general before battle. When Dad entered, he looked older, creased, shaken, but still trying to wear that smug grin. His wife clutched his arm, whispering like a shadow. His eyes met mine for the first time since the airport. Something flickered there, shock? Guilt? Or was it just annoyance that I hadn't stayed abandoned? Testimonies unfolded. Lawyers sparred. Words like irresponsibility, abandonment, neglect echoed in the courtroom air. When I was asked to speak, my voice trembled at first but then steadied. He told me I could figure it out, I said, looking straight at the judge. But I was 15. 15 isn't old enough to figure out being left behind like trash. The courtroom fell silent. Even Dad looked away. By the time the gavel struck, custody was stripped from him. Financial control fractured. My mother won. But walking out of that courtroom, a strange hollowness settled inside me. Because winning didn't feel like freedom yet. It felt like the opening move in a game I wasn't sure I wanted to play. A week later I returned, not to stay but to see. My old house stood there, blinds drawn, the garden unkempt as if it had aged years and days. My mother's driver waited at the curb while I stepped out, gravel crunching under my sneakers. The front door creaked open. Dad wasn't there to greet me. Neither was his wife. The rooms echoed with abandonment. This time his. Boxes were stacked in corners, photos stripped from the walls, the air stale like something already forgotten. I walked into my old room half expecting to see my posters, my desk, my bed. But it was barren. The indent where my bookshelf used to stand looked like a scar. My breath caught when I noticed the envelope on the floor. Opened, torn, discarded. My legal notice. The one that told him I was gone. I picked it up, the paper crumpled, corners smudged with fingerprints. His reaction was written in every fold. Disbelief, then rage, then something he didn't want to admit, fear. Downstairs I found the dining table where we used to eat takeout dinners on Fridays. For years I sat across from him watching him scroll his phone, waiting for him to notice me. And now it sat empty, chairs pushed back as though no one had wanted to sit there at all. The silence pressed against me. I thought revenge would taste sweet, but in this hollow house it tasted bitter, metallic. My chest ached in places I thought had already healed. From the kitchen window I spotted him outside in the yard, alone. No wife, no kids, no smile. He was sitting on a broken lawn chair, head in his hands. Not the confident man who left me at the airport. Just a figure unraveling. He didn't see me and I didn't call out. Something inside whispered that this was part of it. The revenge my mother promised. Watching him face emptiness. Watching him live in the silence he once forced on me. But as I turned to leave, a thought clawed at me. Was this enough? Because part of me didn't want him destroyed. Part of me just wanted him to look at me, truly look at me, and say the words he never had. I'm sorry. Instead I left the house without a sound, the door clicking shut behind me. And that silence was louder than any scream. It happened 2 nights later at a neighborhood gathering I hadn't planned to attend. My mother insisted, said appearances mattered, that people needed to see me not as the abandoned daughter but as the one who returned stronger, untouchable. The lights of the event hall glowed warm, laughter and chatter spilling into the air. I stood near the back, glass of sparkling water in hand, feeling like a ghost in a dress too expensive for my skin. And then he walked in. My dad. He looked smaller somehow, his suit hanging looser, his wife trailing behind him with a forced smile. Conversations dipped as whispers rippled across the room. His name carried weight once, but tonight it carried scandal. His eyes found mine. He froze. For a second, time stopped, the space between us charged like a live wire. Then he moved toward me. "Clara," he said, voice low, almost pleading. "Can we talk?" I stared, every memory colliding in my chest. The airport, his laughter, his careless words. And then my mother's voice beside me, calm and sharp. "Talk?" In front of everyone. Before I could answer, she stepped forward, producing a small remote. The projector behind the stage flickered to life. Photos appeared, images of me alone at the airport, time-stamped, grainy but undeniable. Followed by flight records, bank transfers, hotel invoices, all proof of his choices. Gasps filled the room. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably. His wife's face drained of color. My father's jaw tightened, sweat glistening at his temple. He whispered, "You didn't have to do this here." But my mother only smiled. "You left her in public. She deserves the truth in public." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt the weight of 100 eyes on me, pity and judgment woven together. My hands trembled, glass clinking. "Dad," I said finally, my voice carrying farther than I intended. "I didn't need riches or jets or lawyers. I just needed you not to walk away." The room fell into silence, heavy and suffocating. His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time he looked powerless, not because of my mother's evidence but because of mine. Because nothing he could say would erase what he'd already done. And in that silence, I realized revenge wasn't about ruining him. It was about making him feel the emptiness he had carved into me. After that night, the air around my father shifted permanently. Neighbors stopped inviting him. Business partners pulled away. His new wife left within weeks, taking her children with her. And the man who once abandoned me so easily now found himself abandoned in return. This time by choice, not accident. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to strike back with the same cruelty. The truth itself was enough. It spread through whispers and headlines, leaving him to sit in the ruins of his own decisions. Meanwhile, my life quietly rebuilt itself. I finished school under my mother's roof, but not as her shadow. This time as myself. The jet rides, the marble halls, the polished surfaces, they weren't mine. What was mine was the strength I'd found at 15 in an airport when no one else showed up. One evening months later, I passed by his house again. The yard was overgrown, shutters broken, lights off. I stood at the gate, the air heavy with stillness. For a second, I wondered if he'd look out, if he'd finally say the words I had waited for. But the windows stayed dark. And in that quiet, I let go of needing them. His apology, his recognition, his love, they were weights I no longer carried. I had survived his abandonment, and in doing so, I had built something he could never touch. Peace. I left the gate, my footsteps steady. Behind me was a hollow house. Ahead of me was my life, unshaken. Revenge hadn't been about destroying him. It had been about freeing myself. And in that freedom, I finally closed the chapter that began at the airport.